So we will write a literary analysis essay for the unexpected. Now, the parameters or instructions is just as a text only. So typically you'd be given a text only and it would look like this. Identify a central idea. Analyze how the author's use of one writing strategy develops this central idea. So those are all the elements that we just been talking about. These are all the different literary elements we could talk about, right? Now we have to come up with a central idea. So I've brainstormed some. Sometimes in relationships, people face tough decisions. Sometimes commitments made during engagements are not definite. Women in the 19th century were often pressured into marriage due to financial circumstances. So now I'm probably going to go with this one. Now, even though a text only analysis, right, we're pretending that we don't know anything about Kate Chopin, right? We don't know her at all, never heard of her. But we can still give information on the time period. Like, we're not just like totally, oh my gosh, we don't even know when this was written. We would know it was published in 1894. So we can make a point that women who chose independence were often stigmatized by society. And that's probably the one I want to go with. So I will say women living in the 19th century who chose independence over marriage were stigmatized by society. And for our conflict, for our literary element that best develops us, I just said it. Well, probably the conflict, Dorothea's internal conflict about whether or not to marry Randall, even though he's sick. So we'll say this central idea is developed through Chopin's use of conflict. All right, so now what you would do, we just want a very basic introduction paragraph here. So I'm going to go down to, first I'm going to copy my thesis, and I'm going to start my writing. So remember, whoever's reading our work has already read the story. So we don't have to give them this huge rundown of every single event in the text, all right? Our introduction, we're going to introduce title, author, and that brief summary along with our thesis. Then we'll do one body paragraph, and it will be specifically focused on conflict, Dorothea's internal conflict, and how that developed our central idea. And then our conclusion will just be a real short summary of what we said. All right, here we go. So we're taking a test, and all we have in front of us is a story. We don't need any sources or anything. This is a text-only analysis. Kate Chopin. See, I already want to say something about her. We could say Kate Chopin is a famous feminist writer that published stories throughout the second half of the 19th century. All right, I did introduce her a little bit with some background, but almost any time you're getting a test, it'll be a famous author. Okay, so we'll say Kate Chopin is a famous feminist writer that published stories throughout the second half of the 19th century. We'll say the unexpected was published in 1894 and centered around a female protagonist, Dorothea, who was anxiously awaiting the return of her fiance, Randall. Their love is described as intimate and passionate. with expressions of love. Wait. Their love is described as intimate. How about is described as passionate and intense? That kind of means the same thing. Anyways, their love is described as passionate and intense until Dorothea receives word that Randall is very ill and will be returning to speak with her. Dorothea's internal conflict begins when she is faced with the difficult decision of whether or not to go through with her marriage to Randall. Then I'm going to put my thesis here. And I will say, bam. I might add a little more. Wait, if we said the story's central idea is women living in the 19th century who chose independence over marriage were stigmatized by society. And then I can take this out because that previous sentence says something about her internal conflict. So now I will go in to my body paragraph. All right, let's see. What piece of evidence? So we're talking about the conflict. All right, let's just start it out here. What if we say, Dorothea, Chopin uses a third person narration with limited perspective to show the reader. Chopin uses third person narration with limited perspective in order to show the reader Dorothea's internal conflict. All right, let's go to the part where he offers her everything he has, right? Because that's the big one about the financial thing. So he says, we need not wait. For another reason, if the worst should come, I want you to have all I possess. What fortune I have must be yours, and marriage will make my wish secure. All right. So we were going to say Chopin uses third person narration with limited perspective in order to show the reader Dorothea's internal conflict. When the rising action of the story consists of Dorothea mentally preparing herself for Randall's sickened appearance. However, when he arrives, she is quite shocked and faces and must find it within herself to not let on to Randall that she is disgusted. All right, then we could say, so our thesis is how women who chose independence were stigmatized. So we can say Dorothea's stigmatizable situation. No. Dorothea, we'll say Randall attempts to pressure Dorothea into marrying him immediately by promising her all his wealth if he were to die after they wed. Readers that are aware of the dire financial and social circumstances women were in during the 1800s may find Dorothea's, we'll say, would find Dorothea's final decision to run away one of great bravery. So Dorothea's solution to her problem about whether or not to marry Randall is solved when she mounts her horse and rides into nature, something like that. So that's how she solved her conflict. Then we can say about her stigmatization, right? So we could say the fact, we'll do this as our closing, right? The story's central idea surrounding independent women being shunned during the 19th century is developed through Dorothea's internal conflict. The fact that Dorothea has to flee her home and community because she decided against marrying Randall shows that the stigma she would have faced was too much to bear. So basically, this is what I did. I focused on the conflict. And in this case, her conflict was Desiree versus herself because she felt all guilty because she said she was going to marry this guy. And she did want to marry this guy. But then when he came back and he was all sick, she didn't want to have that life. Even if it meant she could have all the money in the world, she was already firm in her belief that she did not love Randall anymore because of how he was, because she was not attracted to him anymore. Does that say or does that say that Dorothy is a bad person? Maybe, but we don't care if she's a bad person. What we were answering, because do you see how much we could have talked about in an essay? We could have did a text-only analysis that Dorothea is a horrible person, and any person in a relationship that turned their back on a loved one is horrible through and through. We're not focusing on that one though. We want to focus on just the fact that this story shows how women who made independent choices during the 19th century were stigmatized. And we know that because throughout this story, she was struggling within herself. Through her point of view, we knew she was saying things like never, never, never. And then we also, when she solves her conflict, the only way she solved this conflict was by running away. And we don't know if she ever went home. She could have just took off and started a whole new life because that's how much it would mess up a woman's life if she would have get this bad reputation for being a fiance ditcher. And other men probably if this is a, late 1800s society, in small towns, people are going to talk. There wasn't TV, so gossip was TV. Other men would have known she did this, and I don't know, would they have still went along with wanting to get to know her, or would they have judged her? So that would be how she solves this conflict. She was going to be such a stigma, such judgment and repercussion that she said, never mind. And that would be a text-only analysis for the unexpected.